But in general, what I wanted to do is just talk very briefly about what is insurance. And what's important to remember is that insurance is a risk transfer tool. It is an important part of your overall risk management strategy. It is an agreement between you and the insurance company that in exchange for you paying a premium, the insurance company will assume certain risks, and those risks being defined by what the policy covers. So it is a way of transferring some risk that you are exposed to via an insurance agreement in exchange for you paying a premium that the insurance company is willing to take on that risk should those events occur that is covered by that particular policy.
And I will say that we don't take it lightly in regard to the fact that we recognize how much of a firm's revenues are utilized to pay for those insurance tools that we're going to talk about. I think it was the AIA that may have done a review, and on average, behind compensation and overhead costs of rent and buildings and the like, insurance ranked number 3 as to the costs associated with firms. So it's significant, and we recognize that, but we also recognize its importance, and we're going to talk a bit about why it is important to practitioners to have these kinds of safeguards in place.
And it is something I think we tend to forget about because hopefully you don't have to call the insurance company too often for a claim or something like that. But it is an important part of not only your personal life, you all have auto, you have home and things like that, but as a business matter as well, because hopefully you don't have to involve the insurance company, but we see the very, very large claims that come through, and if the individual firms had to pay for those themselves, they would quite honestly be out of business. So as Kate mentioned, we know it's a significant cost, but it's a cost that we think is very crucial to any sound, prudent business plan. So as I mentioned before, it is an essential component of any business operation. I can't imagine any company deciding to do business without insurance because of the risks so inherent in what design professionals do. Every insurance policy, no matter what type it is, home, auto, whatever it is, it has certain coverages and certain exclusions. And one of the things that amazed me about the professional liability policy, it is very clear about what it covers, and it is quite broad. It's one of the things I found quite amazing. It is very, very broad as to what is covered, and the exclusions are quite limited. But it's very important that you always look at your policy and look at what it covers and what it actually excludes.
And I will say, we're going to talk about varying different kinds of insurance coverage throughout this presentation, but we're going to talk specifically about professional liability versus property and casualty, and to the extent that professional liability is extraordinarily broad, at least our policy form, and in general they tend to be inclusive rather than exclusive, but that same cannot be said for property and casualty. That is something that I would tell you you've got to read on a line-by-line analysis for its exclusions, because the policy is a standard policy. It's referred to typically as an ISO type of policy. It's an insurance form, and then depending on what you have is how it's managed through exclusions. So it's just a footnote to say you need to pay particular attention to those exclusions, particularly on the property and casualty side.
Right. And your typical property and casualty policy that Kate's referring to is your general liability policy, your commercial general liability policy that you have that covers a lot of your business operations. So take your professional and then compare it to your general liability, and you'll see a huge difference between those two policies.